All right. This is my recording of the nervous tissue it's our part 4 of our epithelial tissue lecture series. Did not make it sound all official. Before I start, please take a look at the extra credit opportunity that you have for your interactive notebooks. I made another video of that, and that should be posted right beside this one in Google Classroom. And let me remind you to please like my videos, comment only nice things, and subscribe. And then tell all your friends who are in anatomy who maybe, want to hear a lecture that they can watch it too. And then I'll just be so popular on YouTube. I think I'm going to change the name of my YouTube channel. It's Zitterkopf Science, and I just think that sounds so boring. So I was going to call it like Jesus Says or something like that, but or Ask Jesus. Okay, so nervous tissue is going to be really very quick and simple. There's only one picture in this PowerPoint. There are lots and lots of pictures online for you too. So don't overwhelm yourself. But what you're going to want to pay attention to are your nerve cells, okay? These are the actual conducting nerve cells. And when it says they conduct, it's not actually electricity, it's an electrochemical impulse. And you're like, well, I still don't know what that means, electrochemical. So electro means it pertains to charges, electricity, and chemical, meaning that the charges are created by a sodium-potassium pump. Do you remember that from our last section, the sodium-potassium pump and active transport? Sure you do. Okay, the sodium-potassium pump is a protein channel embedded in the cell membrane, okay? This is a cell membrane, right? Little phospholipid tails, double-layered cell membrane. Very quick drawing here. And in the sodium-potassium pump, we had 3 sodiums that move out of the cell and 2 potassiums that move into the cell. And so you get a buildup of charge outside of the membrane. See, 3 positive charges go outside, but only 2 positive charges come back in. So what do you think the inside of the membrane is? Insane in the membrane. No. If you have a buildup of positive charge, if you have 3 positive charges going out, but only 2 positive charges coming in, what kind of charge is the inside going to have compared to the outside? It's going to be a little bit more negative. Okay, so it's going to be partially negative. See that negative sign there? Okay, so you're going to have that positive charge outside, and a negative charge building up on the inside. This is the electrochemical gradient, the impulse that travels down the cell membrane. So the cell membrane is going to be moving sodium and potassium ions across, and that's going to create a wave of a charge that travels down the cell. So that's what nerve cells do, and it takes a lot of energy. So they must have a lot of which organelle? The organelle that's the powerhouse of the cell. Mitochondria. So a cell that has a high energy demand has a lot of mitochondria because it needs a lot of energy, like me on a Friday. And after a triple skinny cinnamon dolce and a cup of English breakfast tea, I have had my daily allowance of caffeine, which means I will probably be crashing 5th period. Okay? Neuroglia are our support cells, and neuroglia means nerve glue. And they take care of the neurons, the nerve cells. If you don't feel like you understand this electrochemical impulse, don't worry. We're going to talk a lot more about it when we get to the nervous system. But I just wanted to kind of refresh your memory a little bit, and that's why we did talk about sodium-potassium pumps. I am going to do a drawing now so that you can see the structure of a nerve cell. And the structure of the nerve cell is fair game for your test. Really? We're almost out of time in here? No. Oh, 11:43. Okay. Whew. I was looking at the wrong day. So let's draw a picture. You draw along with me. Drawing is fun. I draw easy things. I draw circles and squiggles and stuff so that everybody can draw it. And you're going to want to kind of go across the whole, start in the middle of your paper, but leave yourself room. So you're going to draw a circle.
On the same page.
Yeah, on the same page of notes. Draw a circle with a dark spot in it. And then a line. And some squiggles. And you have drawn a neuron. It's really not that hard, is it? Let's label the parts of our neuron. These are called dendrites. It's a D, okay? I want to make sure it looks like a D. Dendrites. This right here is the cell body. Nucleus. Axon. And axon terminals. Terminal meaning the end. Okay, then once you've drawn that, you can draw on the edge kind of the end of another axon here.
On the side of it?
Yeah, kind of at the end. And here you can draw, so we could call this axon or neuron A, this one in the middle, neuron B, and neuron C would be over here. Does that make sense? B's in the middle.
Oh.
A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I'm going to add some more layer of detail. The space here between the two neurons is called a synapse. So there's a synapse there. And we have another space there. That's also a synapse. So what do you notice about the relationship between neuron A and neuron B? They're spaced out. They aren't even touching each other. So how would neuron A be able to signal neuron B? Energy in a way, yep. It's by the release of chemicals. So that's why we call this electrochemical. There are chemicals that get released out of the axon terminals from neuron A, and those chemicals are called neurotransmitters. That's a long word. Neuro for neuron. Transmit to send a signal. So these are chemical messengers, chemical signals. And those neurotransmitters get absorbed by receptors in nerve B. And when enough of them get absorbed, are you stuck? Do you have a question? Are you, yes?
Which part is the receptor?
Here, okay. Oh, good question. These are your receptors. The dendrites are the receptors, okay? So those neurotransmitters go across the space and they get received by the dendrites. Okay? Great question. If the nerve B, gets stimulated enough, it receives enough stimulus, those sodium-potassium pumps start to open, and it releases a wave of chemical changes that travels down the cell, from the cell body, down the axon, to the axon terminals. Okay, cell body to axon, axon to axon terminals. And so we call this a action potential. If you have the potential for something, that means you have the ability to do something, right? So an action potential is the ability to do an action. And guess what action nerve B is going to make? It's going to release its neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters move across the synapse and are received by nerve C. So we remember we have A, B, and C. So while nerves are not even touching each other, they can stimulate each other by the release of neurotransmitters that move across that space. This is how your brain works, you guys. Now, here's the scary part. When you use drugs or legal medications, over-the-counter medications that a doctor gives you, many of them affect your brain and affect your neurotransmitters. Some of them can actually come in and block receptors, and so your nerves are releasing neurotransmitters, but you're not responding to them. They can imitate neurotransmitters, and so it's like you have extra, so you get an extra strong response. It can slow down. It can speed up things. And so when you're using drugs, whether they're legal over the counter, Tylenol, okay, ibuprofen, they're affecting these chemical pathways, Tylenol especially, because Tylenol blocks pain receptors in your brain. And so it basically numbs your brain to the pain. The problem still exists. When I take Tylenol for my ankle, I still have the swelling in my ankle, and the nerves in my ankle are still sending the message to my brain. But the Tylenol blocks the pain receptors in my brain, and so my brain doesn't respond, hey, there's pain, hey, there's pain. When I take ibuprofen, that works on a different chemical pathway. It stops the swelling. And so by decreasing the swelling in my ankle, I don't have as much pain. When I first broke my ankle and they put me in the ambulance, they gave me morphine. Morphine is a super powerful opiate. It blocks pain receptors and enhances pleasure receptors. And so I still felt the pain, but I didn't care. Because my brain was going, oh yeah, what is this? This feels so good. The problem is with opiates, oh, it does. Your brain goes, oh yeah. And you go, oh, this is great. But the problem is that the more you use those things, the more you have to take, because your brain starts to build up a dependence and a resistance to it. And so you're constantly chasing the high. You want more and more of that neurotransmitter because your brain starts to get used to it. Heroin, the most addictive drug out there. You do heroin one time and you are automatically addicted. And you will constantly, forever chase the dragon because you will never have a high as great as your first high from heroin. Because your brain literally it hits every pleasure receptor in your brain, and it's better than anything you are ever going to feel ever again in your life. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to get that high again. And that's why people overdose, because they take more and more and more. Or they do something called speedballing, where they take heroin and chase with a chaser of cocaine, and you overdose and die, frothing at the mouth, or you're so high, you're unconscious, and you vomit and you choke on your own vomit. Watch Breaking Bad. You want to see somebody die a horrible death? That scene in Breaking Bad, the girlfriend dies during a heroin overdose, and it's absolutely graphic and disgusting and horrible. And there are kids every day your age. You also die that way when you're drunk and you pass out and you choke on your own vomit. Okay? So, your brain is a very delicate, amazing organ. And it's amazing how it works with these chemicals. Be careful about what chemicals you put in your body and the ones you put in your brain. You only got one. And guess what? These nerve endings, when you damage them, they don't grow back. So when you do things and you damage your brain, like people who sniff glue or sniff paint or things like that, it kills nerve cells like crazy. And literally, it's like you're melting your brain. Now, sniffing glue and huffing, maybe not that big of a deal here, but in South America, it's a really cheap way to get high. And oh my God, I've seen interviews with people and they're like, what? And they've got like silver paint residue underneath their nose from they've been sniffing paint fumes to get high. So there's some nasty, nasty ways you can destroy your brain. And why are drugs so scary for kids your age? Because your brains are still developing. And so drugs impact your brains differently than they impact an adult's brain. For example, marijuana, there's a lot of research that shows that marijuana does different things in a developing brain than it does in an adult brain. You haven't even reached your potential yet. So if you're doing things that are going to impact the development of your brain at this age, who knows what the long-term effects are. And as we start to legalize marijuana, and everyone thinks that because it's legalized, that means it's not dangerous. Alcohol's dangerous, and yet it's legal. Cigarettes are dangerous, and they're legal. So being legal doesn't mean it's dangerous. It was just a matter of money. So be careful with your brain. You only have a certain number of neurons. They don't recreate themselves, and they start dying the minute you're born. I'd like to keep as many as I can. And that's why we worry about in football concussions, right? Because those blows to the head kill nerve cells. And we now see the long-term effects on football players, college and professional, who've had a lot of concussions and how it's affected their brain long-term, leading to depression, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and so on. Scary, scary. Let's look at nerve cells. Why did I mention it on game day? I'm sorry. We're just talking about nerves. Okay, so this weekend, protect your brains and don't smoke out. All right. Okay. So here's the cell body. Can you see the little nucleus there? If I erase, can you see the cell body in the nucleus? And then it's hard to tell on some of these, but you can see that each nerve cell will only have one axon per nerve cell, but there will be multiple dendrites. And then there will be far fewer nerve cells than there are glial cells. So there are many more glial cells. Because you need a lot of little workers to help take care of these big demanding cells. This is brain tissue. And so you also have lots of connective tissue in there as well. But the brain, without it being fixed, the brain, and fixed means it's not in a preservative. The brain is the consistency of toothpaste. Kind of firm, like jello-y kind of stuff. All right? Any questions about nerve tissue or neuroglia? All right. So make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. Please leave a comment. Something nice. Okay? I've had nice comments in the past. If you want to say something mean, just don't say it. All right, you guys, that's it. Study for your practicum, your quest on Monday.